Boston is well known for having one of the most disconnected regional rail networks in America. All you have to do is take a look at the map of the system to see this. The system is divided into two parts, the lines operating out of North Station and those operating out of South Station. It's almost like these two sides operate as two completely different systems, and they would, if it wasn't for this line, which might be the most important railway connection in Boston. Come along as we explore the history of this line and what makes it so important today. This line is the Grand Junction. While the Grand Junction serves a vital role for passenger railroads today, it has historically been used as a freight line. The line opens in sections between 1849 and 1856, running from Beacon Park Yard on the Worcester Line, through Boston Engine Terminal and onto the eastern route, today the MBTA's Newburyport-Rockport Line, before curving south into East Boston and the Boston Harbor waterfront. However, Beacon Park Yard was closed in 2013, eliminating a lot of freight traffic in the area. Up until 2018, the Grand Junction saw one daily CSX freight train, which served industries in Everett. However, that train was abolished, and the Grand Junction is only regularly used by passenger railroads today. It's also important to note that the Grand Junction today is just a shadow of its former self. The right-of-way from Chelsea to the Boston Harbor waterfront no longer sees trains and has been repurposed for a variety of uses. Between Chelsea and the Mystic River, it is used as a busway for the MBTA Silver Line's SL3 service, along with a parallel bike path. South of the Mystic River, a bypass road and pedestrian greenway occupy parts of the Grand Junction's old right-of-way. The section through Boston Engine Terminal and Cambridge are still in use, with the section along the eastern route being used by the MBTA's Newburyport-Rockport line. The Grand Junction is of vital importance to the railroads which operate in Boston. You see, Boston's railway network is very disconnected. There are two sides, referred to as the North Side and the South Side. The North Side consists of the lines operating out of North Station, 4 MBTA commuter rail lines, and the Amtrak Downeaster service. The South Side includes the lines operating out of South Station, with 8 different commuter rail lines and Amtrak's 2 electrified Northeast Corridor trains, the Northeast Regional and Acela, as well as the overnight sleeper to Chicago, the Lakeshore Limited. These two sides are very disconnected, and no passenger trains operate between them. However, it is often necessary for equipment to move between these two sides. This is because both the MBTA and Amtrak have their maintenance facilities on only one side, meaning equipment will have to move from one side to the other in order for maintenance to be performed on them. This is where the Grand Junction comes into play. The Grand Junction is the only connection near Boston between the two sides. Therefore, it is essential for both the MBTA and Amtrak. The MBTA's main maintenance facility is located on the north side, at Boston Engine Terminal. Equipment on the north side can easily access Boston Engine Terminal since it is just north of North Station. However, the process is not so simple for equipment on the south side. South side's main yard for assembling sets is Reedville Yard, located off the Fairmount line next to Reedville Station. To do the switching process, a locomotive, typically a GP40MC locomotive, is designated to sort equipment in the yard. However, this locomotive, known as the Reedville Switcher, also takes equipment to and from Boston Engine Terminal. The Reedville Switcher runs to Boston Engine Terminal via the Fairmount Line, Worcester Line, and Grand Junction. At Beacon Park Yard, it must reverse direction from the Worcester Line onto the Grand Junction. The switcher then drops off its cars at Boston Engine Terminal and picks up a load bound for Reedville. The Reedville Switcher runs daily, almost always during the night, except on Sundays, when they run in daylight. However, the MBTA isn't the only railroad which needs this connection. There's also Amtrak. Amtrak's Boston maintenance facility is located on the south side, at the Southampton Street Yard, giving easy access for equipment of the Northeast Regional, Acela, and Lakeshore Limited. However, Amtrak's Downeaster trains operate out of the north side. Therefore, Amtrak runs as-needed equipment moves, called the Portland Extra, from Portland, Maine, a yard for Downeaster equipment, to Southampton Street Yard via the Grand Junction. Without the Grand Junction, operations for both railroads become a lot more complicated. This scenario actually played out in 2012 and 2013, when the line was closed for emergency repairs. While it was closed, the MBTA and Amtrak still needed to transfer equipment between the two sides. To do this, they ran equipment moves along an extremely circuitous route. As a result, these moves were called detour extras. The equipment moves took the Worcester line all the way west to Worcester, then reversed direction and headed north on the Worcester subdivision to Ayer. At Ayer, they turned east onto the Fitchburg line before continuing east back into Boston. Not only did this route take a lot more time, but it also required negotiating trackage rights to use the tracks owned by Pan Am Railways, a freight company. This arrangement was not sustainable, and thankfully, the Grand Junction reopened in early 2013, but this episode underscored how important the line is. In addition to its importance, the Grand Junction also has a bunch of unique and interesting features. Let's check it out.
So the Grand Junction splits off from the Worcester line here at the milepost 3.3 switch, next to the Charles River and under the Mass Pike. It then crosses over the BU Bridge, which is one of the few places where a plane can fly over a car, which is driving over a train, which is running over a boat. Pretty cool.
Another interesting thing to note about the BU Bridge is that while the line is single track today, you can very clearly see where the second track used to be. After the Charles River, we arrive at the Grand Junction runaround, where the single track becomes two.
The runaround is used to store various MBTA freight cars, seen here.
The line becomes single track again just before Massachusetts Avenue, before which it crosses two pedestrian crossings.
The section between Massachusetts Avenue and Main Street is very interesting. For one, there's another pedestrian crossing. And here, the line runs under some buildings belonging to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, creating an almost tunnel-like feel.
After Main Street, the line curves slightly north and crosses Broadway. Broadway is unique because of the precautions taken at this crossing. At Broadway, the train comes to a stop and the conductor walks into the middle of the road to make sure all traffic has stopped before the train can proceed. It's interesting to note that despite its location in a densely populated area, all crossings on the Grand Junction are horn protected, meaning that trains blow the crossing horn sequence when passing through the railroad crossings. After Broadway, the line passes through three more road crossings before curving west and joining the Fitchburg line at Swift Interlocking. That's all for today's video. I hope you learned a thing or two about the history of the Grand Junction and why it's so important today. If you want to see a compilation of various Reedville switchers and Portland extras on the Grand Junction, click on the video in the top right corner. And if you want to learn more about the Grand Junction and how it could potentially be used for passenger service, I recommend this video by the Rail Bostonian, linked in the top right corner. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.